Welcome to Project Quantum Leap, the podcast. I'm Christina.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Sydney. 3 fans, 3 generations, 3 unique perspectives, 1 leap back into a television phenomenon.
Today we follow Ben on an out-of-this-world mission aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis.
This is Season 1, Episode 2, and it's titled Atlantis. The leap date is March 7th, 1998, and the person being leapt into is David Tamora.
The synopsis from IMDB is that Ben finds himself headed into orbit aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis in 1998. Addison confides to Ian about a discovery and finds herself at odds with Magic and Jenn. So, you both know how excited I was for this episode.
Yes, we were. We dig that.
Yeah. It is one of the things I always wanted Sam Beckett to do. So I was I was super excited. So I picked up some facts about the Space Shuttle Atlantis, which is a real shuttle.
It was real. I just learned that.
Yeah, so I got all this from space.com. And the Space Shuttle Atlantis is on display at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex at Cape Canaveral in Florida.
So you can you walk through it? Or you just go and look at it? It's like the whole shuttle?
I mean, you can take it out on the runway and fly it if you want.
I mean,
No, I'm kidding.
Don't
do that.
Most of the shuttle is a cargo hold, though. So, the part with the people is not that big.
But isn't it big, based on what we're looking at in the episode? It's big enough to fit an entire, people, into it, right?
I think they were generous with space in the episode because I think it's actually pretty cramped.
It's more of a cockpit with a giant truck bed.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Because the space shuttles were not what you're meant to stay in for long term. That's just the transport from point A to point B, Earth to station.
So you just go see it and walk up to it, and it's small enough that it's you can see it from on the other side of a rope.
Yeah, it's smaller than they used to fly them on the back of the 747s, right?
Is it larger than a bread box?
It's larger than a bread box, but smaller than the planes that take you to Hawaii.
Is it larger than a duck? Anyway, continue with your science.
So the first flight was October 3rd through 7th in 1985. The last flight was July 8th through the 21st in 2011. The number of missions it flew was 33. Time in space is 306 days, 14 hours, 12 minutes, and 43 seconds. It was notable for the large number of satellites it launched, and its first flight was a secret military mission. That's all it told me. So
that's presumably this one then.
Maybe no,
because this mission is fictional. So maybe that was
this is the secret mission.
It's the secret. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was also the last flight of the shuttle program.
Okay.
Which I watched on MSN. When I was supposed to be working.
Date yourself, why don't you?
Just got out.
They were the only ones with the good video at
that
the time.
That doesn't compute to anyone. You watch something. What is MSN, and how do you watch something on it?
It was on their little news program, on the computer at work.
Wow.
I can't get my mouse to go. Okay. There we go. Yeah, so that's that. Like I said, space.com. It's pretty easy to find. I'll put it in the show notes. Cool. Anyway, just in case.
Do you know if the people that were fictionalized, I guess, the astronauts that we saw, were they real people? Was David a real person, or were the characters made up?
They were made up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's not like Bruce Willis in Armageddon, who was definitely a real person.
Sure.
Don't you Santa Claus me right now.
Can you imagine if these were real people and someone from one of the writers from Quantum Leap was like, hey, we want to write you into an episode, but we're going to say that you were actually you died, and we have to go fix that in history.
That would be awesome. Did they ever do that in the original Quantum Leap, where they were he leapt into somebody who actually existed, but they had to correct I don't know,
I think
if somebody was going to get assassinated, but he had to stop the assassination, but it wasn't an attempted assassination that actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, there was one where he did try to stop the Kennedy assassination, but it still happened.
Yeah.
I think that's a very sensitive line to toe. That's the
Well, it doesn't have to be a murder. It could be like just they say. I'll just go back to Bruce Willis. It's a running theme. I talked about Die Hard in the last episode too. So
by the way, not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor by Bruce Willis, or Die Hard, or Armageddon actually. So what if, hypothetically, Sam like leapt into the body of Bruce Willis, and in this reality, Bruce Willis was going to get murdered, so he has to save Bruce Willis. And obviously, we know that in real reality, Bruce Willis was not murdered, so it's not technically changing history. It's creating a hypothetical change of history that then gets changed to what is actual history.
I think there's something to that, but that's kind of like the line that you have to toe, because it is still fiction, and for the most part is escapism. And when you, I mean, this is personal feeling, of course. When you start to merge that into real life, it's like, okay, well then why doesn't Sam or Ben like stop, I don't know, World War or Hitler from doing things or something like that? Like,
yeah, or like the Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was gonna say that, but then I was like, well, that's because that was way too far in the past. But so I went something more.
Even
I
Hitler was too far in the past for Sam.
True,
I keep forgetting about that like lifetime rule.
But yeah, they're like, okay, John Lennon, right? What if Sam tried to prevent John Lennon from being assassinated? Or why wouldn't Sam try to prevent that from happening? Like, why only this real historical event, but he'll allow these other things to happen? So I think that's the line that you have to kind of be careful about when you're trying to make fantasy.
Well, there's a little past though in that he doesn't control who he leaps into, though, right? Like he could want to do that, but he can't.
Well,
like choose where he's going to leap.
The leaps are not random; they are controlled, right, Christina?
By someone.
Yeah.
They never really quite figured out who.
In the original show, somebody is puppeteering.
It's God, time, fate, whatever. They're not 100% sure. The bartender at the end, of course, tells Sam that he's the one controlling the leap. So is it a subconscious thing? But it's not 100% clear. And at that point, it's open to interpretation on what you want to believe.
Okay, so I guess it could be random if that's what you want to believe in.
Yeah, I just mean that's sort of the excuse for like, why doesn't he go solve all these other problems? Well, because he can't like decide where he leaps into. And they did say in this episode, Addison did specifically say to Ben, like, you don't control the leaps.
Yeah.
But also she might not know. What if he does?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, in summary, I would say that I think this episode did a lot of things better than the first one did. It was, I think, a lot less exposition-y, which is to be expected. A lot less like, well, here's a whole bunch of explanations as to why that is. Like, here's some backstory. Like, there was a lot less of that. But I think that's pretty standard for episode 2 versus pilot of any show. I still think, though, that it retained a lot of that sort of 90s, 90s episodic tone in the writing. And I think part of what defines that for me is sort of, at least based on what I've heard you guys talk about already so far, a sort of loose interpretation of the actual science. Like a lot of shortcuts in terms of like, let's just make this science a little less sciencey so that the people watching can accept it and not have to think too hard. Because that's me in the audience, in case anyone was unclear about that. I'm that person who doesn't know diddly nothing about space science other than, hey, there's a space and it's full of stuff and you can't breathe up there, man. Don't try. But I feel like you guys have a lot of like potentially little gripes about this, like little nitpicky things about the science that I never would have thought of.
Well,
but yeah.
I do have something I want to leave in for probably later in the episode. You know what? No, I'll say it right now.
Go.
Ben jumping off the space shuttle.
Oh my god, I had the same gripe.
Is more unbelievable than the concept of quantum leaping itself.
Yeah.
So that's not a thing you can do.
I mean, you can do
it,
but the success chance he has of actually hitting his target is so astronomically finite. I mean, in space, everything is moving. I mean, they even
But
show
Buzz
that the
Lightyear
space
did it.
station or the little station that the Russians are in is like rotating, and he's just gonna like he took like 2 seconds to line that shot up,
Yeah.
yeet, and then the thought that he could actually even grab something and like in that spacesuit where you're gonna have like fairly limited like mobility and grip. Oh, like that, like literally, I would sooner believe that quantum leap is real than that space jump is real. Which I mean,
So
it's
that's,
okay.
I think, what I'm
it's
talking
cheesy.
about then.
I'm not gonna like. It's not something I'm griping about. But I'm just going to point.
But
it.
I think that's exactly what I'm talking about, though. Like, in a show that would have been on TV in the 80s and 90s, like, the average 20-something-year-old who's watching the show wasn't really thinking about, like, that was normal, I think, for TV at that time, for silly stuff like that to happen. And you don't really question it because it's like, it's cool. Look he just floated across in between the 2 spaceships and made it, and he saved everybody. Woo! Like, that's a very, like,
let's also
old feel-good show thing.
let's also not apparently bring up the fact that would knock this satellite out of its orbit. Like that would have altered its course like pretty significantly.
Wow.
He's a large mass of body.
Well, and since we're on the subject of the space station and the jump and the knocking on the door, okay, I'm not an astronaut, never been on a space station, but I have been in the military, and part of me is like, this is somewhat of a military operation. Do these people on the space station not work in shifts?
Yeah, like everyone goes to sleep at the same time. No one's awake, making sure that they're not like falling to the earth.
We don't know how they do it in Russia. In Mother Russia, everyone sleep at once. We all sleep together. We die.
What's okay? So what I did say in private before we started the episode is I was looking at my notes. I was like, wow, almost everything I wrote was negative. I found out later I was only like griping about all the like the weird either show technical issues or like the weird science issues. Even though I liked the episode, it was very fun. But
it was a great
the
episode.
things I chose to write down in the moment were all negative things. So yeah, moving on, like kind of a segue to, the Russian space Mir. I don't know if it's a space station or a satellite, but Mir.
It's Mir. Yeah, it's a space station.
Was that also real?
Yes, that was real.
Duh.
Nice. The only thing I really had a gripe with that I can think of right now anyway, story-wise, was all of the pride in the American astronauts not asking for Russians for help, which, to my understanding, is not how it was in the 90s and 2000s, especially when they're working together on the International Space Station.
Yeah.
Why would they be so prideful? They would rather risk burning to death in the atmosphere than asking the Russians for help.
Now,
That feels much more of an 80s thing than an 90s thing.
I'm going to touch on that because I do think it was silly, but also, what was the age of that guy? He was getting ready to retire. Maybe he was still living in Cold War mentality.
The
I
old
thought
Russian
that
guy?
too. Like Cold War is like over for like 15
The
years.
commander.
Oh,
The one that got injured on the head.
Reynolds. His name is Reynolds.
Yeah.
Reynolds.
I wrote that down,
But
but I
also
was not going to remember that.
He didn't look old enough to have trained this other lady who didn't look that much younger than him.
Stratton.
Yeah, Stratton.
Her name is Stratton. I wrote that down too.
She would be about 41, 42, because she is actually from, I think they've confirmed it, she is the baby that was born in the first
Oh, cool.
Quantum Leap episode.
But my point being is that guy, if he trained her whole life, he would have had to start training her. I mean, they're just too close in age, I think, for that to have been too believable.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't think maybe he trained her whole life, but
Yeah,
I
like,
think
you're born, you're going to be an astronaut.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit older than she is.
Yeah, I mean,
he's obviously at the age of retiring. I think, and they said this was her first flight, but I don't think it was. Like, I heard someone else talking about it. It sounds like this was her first flight where she's like second in command, getting ready to be a commander, because they're not going to put you second in command if this.
Yeah, it's your first flight.
Yeah, they want someone who knows what they're doing.
So I think all of this ties in with we're honing in on what I think defines. It's a defining trait in this sort of cheesy 80s, 90s TV show thing, which is like, put aside the logic for a second and just have fun.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting line there, because I feel like some shows do that now, but it's really hard to get away with. And it's like, if you are clearly doing an homage to another older show, then I feel like it makes sense in this context, because there's
Keep its heart.
that's what it feels like to me, because I think, one, it was, they sort of made compromises on the science and the believability on those things for the sake of fun, but also for the sake of things like what's happening in this reality was sort of mirroring, like sort of paralleling what was happening in present day with the Quantum Leap team.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we had this sort of mentor-mentee headbutting
In both
thing
stories.
happening in both stories. And I think they needed to make adjustments in the logic and the science to make it like work thematically, and for the stories to work, artistically in that sort of paralleling each other thing. That was what I picked up on.
Yeah, totally. And on that, one of the things I was worried about as this episode kind of started and the last episode kind of ended was drama that felt manufactured for the sake of drama, because that's just an easy thing to do in a TV show. Like, make drama because there can be drama.
Yeah.
And that's how the episode started, but I was relieved at the end to see that it was actually just resolved in this one episode. Like, we're talking about Magic, Addison, Ian, Jenn. I won't include Ben in this because he doesn't remember. But those four, they've all been working together for years, and suddenly they like don't want to communicate and don't trust each other. Like, I was worried that was gonna like be kind of the central point of the present day story arc for the season, which is just hard to believe. Like, if they've been working together for that long on the same project and like communicating and presumably trusting each other, why would it just stop all of a sudden because there's like this moment happened?
Yeah.
And
well, they flat out say toward the beginning of that conflict that that's the hardest part of Ben not being there, is that he typically served that role of bridging the gaps between where all the different characters might not have seen eye to eye. So we're seeing their dynamic kind of falling apart in his absence, and they're sort of trying to figure out how to maneuver problem solving when he is not there. He's sort of, from what it seems like, given the context of this episode, he's usually the one playing middleman, helping them all, like, I forget exactly what the quote was, but he's the one who steers them all toward the same goal, ultimately, is what they say.
I think he says running, I think Jen says running in the same direction or something like that. Rowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just popped in my head.
And but I was not pleasantly surprised. I was relieved. Satisfied is the word.
Yeah.
To see that sort of drama was temporary, and it looks like that will not be a main focus, because there's going to be enough drama in the show without this sort of like manufactured drama in between the one team with Al's daughter and obviously the Ben's secrets, whatever he's hiding, that this felt like it would have been too much drama. But seeing it resolved was good.
Well, they have like a family dynamic in the sense of like Magic is sort of their father figure, and they're all kind of like bickering siblings who don't always have the same. That's a good way to put it. They don't like all have the same plan of action, even though they all ultimately want the same thing. So they're all sort of like the different kids at the different ages and stuff. But this episode, to me, I think really highlighted the difference in the relationship between like Addison and Ian versus the relationship between Magic and Jenn, because it seems like Jenn is kind of like the oldest sibling who typically is going to take Magic's side and echo what the dad says, because that's happening both in this episode and that happened in the last one too, where they had that sort of like she's the oldest kid thing.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then like Ian and Addison had sort of this, almost like they're twins. They're like the siblings that are close together, and they're the ones who have like their secret language that maybe they don't necessarily share with Dad. And then Jen had to come in and be like, hey, maybe you guys should let Dad in on this. I think he knows what he's talking about. Like, give him the thumb drive.
And Ben is the middle
and
child
that
that
sort
does
of
things his own way.
yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, or the middle child who it falls on him to be like, hey guys, maybe let's all figure this out.
Yeah.
Like the one who can step back and see everybody's perspective.
Yeah, I can see that.
And try to bring
I mean,
them.
it's a super unhealthy work environment, but it makes great television.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's also not always advised that in situations like this, work environments, people be, in love and getting married either. So,
I mean, how much do they see of the outside world?
It seems like they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Addison talks about that
Yeah.
a lot. Like, that was why it shook her so much that, like, there was something she didn't know
about the
with
quantum
Ben.
leap
It wasn't
project
just
and him.
Yeah. She's like, she said, like, it felt like our entire lives revolved around this project to the point that we had to struggle to not talk about it when we came home. So this kind of was their entire world. I do, by the way, not to take over, but I do also really like how there is this mystery element to the show in terms of we at the audience also don't know what Ben's motivation was.
Mm-hmm.
And like we also don't know like what his connection is with Al's daughter and like what it is they're actually trying to do. The mystery is, because something that's really frustrating on TV is when like the audience knows something and we're waiting for the characters to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And they take forever.
Yeah. But that's not happening here. We're in on the mystery too, or rather, we're not in on the mystery. We're trying to solve the mystery also with the characters, and that's a really good that's a good tool, I think.
Yeah, we're on the same journey as them.
Yeah.
I like the idea of not having everything just laid out in front of us. I like discovering things as we go along.
Yeah.
And I like also how they kind of present it. You don't really know like who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. Is anybody a bad guy? Like, what's going on? What's the motivation? Obviously, there's some kind of conflict between Janice and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably from prior.
Probably something that maybe has to do with Al.
Most likely.
Or his death.
Yeah. So, that plays into it. We're probably going to find out more about Magic pretty soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. I love all the scenes with Magic and Jenn. I love that sort of like she's his sort of protege, but also she's still kind of got that stubborn daughter edge a little bit. But she's sort of the most under his wing out of all of them. And she's also kind of like she kind of steps in and takes that mom tone when Magic isn't there. So seeing their dynamic is really interesting. I like that we had a lot of just their journey sort of together when we would flash back to present day and see the two of them trying to figure out what's going on. I'm really interested to see how that plays out. I do have a little bit of a character. We're going to keep using gripe, but my little one, obviously I don't pick up on the science stuff as much, but I did have a character one. I really feel like Ben would have figured out from context clues that Addison is his lady. I feel like those interactions where he's like, who's the lucky guy? And she's like, oh, you wouldn't remember him. And like her body language and their chemistry and the fact that like his Swiss cheese memory, they're not using that term in this show.
No, they're not. And I really
we know
like
what
that.
They'll probably say it at some point. They gotta, because they know we know it. But
I literally said the same thing in my notes.
What was that?
Oh, I'm just agreeing with you. I literally said the same thing in my notes.
Oh, yeah, I had the opposite. So when you're done, I'm going to...
Okay, fun.
We have our first differing opinion.
I love that. I mean, it made for a great, cute scene. Like, as we're watching it, I look at Andrew and I was like, so that's really cute. That was enjoyable to watch, but I think he should have figured it out. Like, that was too big of a
If
hint.
not with the you wouldn't remember him, then the you better be.
Yeah, so many of the
Yeah.
interactions throughout the whole episode was just like, because he got a chunk of his Swiss cheese memory back from remembering David and being like, oh, I love this guy as a kid. I looked up to him. I'm from Korea. I feel like, okay, you're not gonna remember the love of your life based on any of the context of the fact that, for me, the kicker was not even you wouldn't remember him, but it was at the end when he's like, thank you for being the only one who nobody trusts me, and she's like, I do, I trust you, I'll be with you every step of the way. It's like, dude, they're fucking like, clearly, like, he should figure out, like, oh, I have tapped this lady bare minimum, like, she loves me. This lady loves me. Like, I feel like, I don't know. Some dudes are that dumb, though, I guess. That maybe he's just that.
He's a super genius. He could be super dense.
Yeah.
But
lady like me?
Yeah. Well, see, I took it the complete opposite direction.
Okay.
And I was like, that's so cute. He's developing a crush on his fiance.
I mean, that is cute. It's so cute. Do not get me wrong. It made for very enjoyable television, but then my logic brain, what little of it I have, kicked in and said, wait a minute, he should have figured out that she loves him from that. Like, I think that was enough emotional context. But you're right. It was another one of those situations of compromise for the sake of good, fun television, rather. It was like, in reality, would an intelligent person have figured out, like, oh, I think we're in love? But also the flirty will they won't they dynamic that's good TV. So I think we make that compromise for the sake of that. And again, very 80s, very 90s, very moonlighting.
And I think I just got this vibe building on that with, like, him and Addison. Just, he had this, I don't know, childlike wonder this whole episode, like, oh my god, I want a space shuttle.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
realistic, actually.
That was very realistic.
Yeah, I would probably puke, and then I would be really excited.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, during the takeoff scene, I would probably pass out from those G's. Like, I get tunnel vision on roller coasters. Like, if I was on the launch of a space shuttle, I would just not stay awake. Not from fear or anything, just my body can't handle those G's. I would just go out.
Well, Ben had a little advantage of he had to handle the presumable G's of leaping between realities.
Yeah, I wonder what that does to the body. It's an excellent question.
I mean, I'm sure that it's akin to being on a roller coaster or going on, on a rocket or.
There was, I want to say there was one of the books that actually went into that, like, how Sam felt between, like, leaps when he would, like, first leap into somebody, how he'd have that nausea and stuff like that. I'm like, would it be like that all the time? That sounds like horrible.
And can you really get used to it if you're always forgetting?
Right?
Speaking of G's, I want to talk about that uncontrolled spin the space shuttle went into.
Oh.
What a weird juxtaposition to have that happen, and then when Ben leaps from the shuttle into another space station, there's no movement. Like,
yeah, that was
at first.
I mean,
the first time I watched it, I was like, "What the hell made the shuttle, like, spin so rapid?" Like, I went and I looked at how heavy a space shuttle was. Apparently, they're about 4.5 million pounds. And I was like, what happened that was so huge that it made that much weight in space tumble out of control? But then the second time I watched it, they said that the payload's thruster went off. The little ISS module they had, they said the thrusters on that went off. And now I'm just thinking, they shipped that thing fuel ready and ready to fire inside the payload? So I'm like I said, most of my gripes are actually like the science-y or like technical show gripes, even though I loved the episode.
I think you're gonna have to let that go.
I know, but it's just like it's so brushed aside. Like, oh yeah, the thrusters went off. Wait, why? Why? So
I'll tell you why, because that's good enough for people like me.
That's just like a bad design.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at Apollo 13.
Okay.
Tom Hanks.
I mean,
30 years before that, but
But I mean, I don't know how much you remember of that movie, but I mean, that thing was spinning kind of wild.
Yeah, but like an explosion went off, right?
Well,
Their door got stuck. Nothing exploded on the.
oh, you're right. Nothing did explode. Never mind.
Their payload door got stuck, and then they said that the payload, meaning the ISS module they're carrying,
Yeah.
in case Cindy doesn't understand what I meant, the ISS module that they're carrying in their cargo hold shifted.
Mm-hmm.
But like the weight was still on. Like I don't know. I can't wrap my head around.
And where's that thing going? Like they jettisoned it. Like,
Yeah.
Is it gonna fall back to Earth?
And where did the debris come from? I think they said it came from them.
I probably when they jettisoned it, like something, whatever caused it to be all, I don't know, whatever, wonky.
I mean, space debris happens, so I'm not going to argue about that one.
Yeah.
I just don't think they should have said it came from them, which I think they did. I don't remember though. But yeah, so like huge heavy thing gets a door stuck, door becomes unstuck, and then it spins out of control. I don't buy it. But
Well,
I
I
love
don't
it.
think
It
they
doesn't matter. The point is I love it
Yeah.
anyway. It fits with that cheese that we keep talking about. That
Okay, can we talk?
is just fantasy
sorry.
cheese. Yeah, go ahead.
Can we talk about one more fantasy cheese?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like the green screen was much better,
Oh yeah.
Way better.
Oh, totally.
but
Way better.
what was with that backdrop?
The space one.
Yes.
It was too like pristine, I guess.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I know space, like stars and everything, they're not just willy-nilly. There's an order to them, but this looked too uniform to be believable for me personally. I mean, Apollo 13 was pretty believable, and that was in the 90s.
Mm.
They had that Universal money too.
I want to comment, but I'm not sure I know enough about it to comment. Like, I want to say it definitely looks weird, but I can't say that that's wrong because I've never seen real space outside of our atmosphere. So I feel like we should be able to see more stars, right? Because there's less light, so it should be so littered with stars. We should be able to see the Milky Way galaxy stripe. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we can only see those because the light's getting trapped in our atmosphere, and then we can see it. I don't know.
It just kind of looked like they threw up a black curtain and put white dots on it.
Well,
Like it didn't.
But Addison wasn't glowing.
yeah.
Like
True.
like there was no outline around her. The green screen was way better done. I could like tell it was a green screen more so because of the backdrop instead of like that chroma key. But
Well, here's what I was thinking. Like the lights were really bright on the ship.
Mhm.
Like when they were sitting up there was a lot of like bright light shining on them from the machinery and stuff. And like when we're outside and there's a lot of stars in the sky, if everybody's lights are on, the stars become less visible. But then when everybody turns lights off, you see the stars better. So like, could that be a thing, or is that just?
I want to say that's because the light pollution gets stuck in our atmosphere, which dims the light. But there's no atmosphere where they are.
She has a point though. If you are on a space shuttle, even if you're in like the payload area and everything's open, if you have all those bright lights, you're not going to see the stars very well.
Yeah, I think that's.
You're going to be blinded by those bright lights. Well, not blinded, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's light pollution.
Revved up like a deuce.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not sure I know enough about it to comment one way or the other, but you know, I think both. I think that's a good explanation that I would readily believe. So.
I think though, in the episode overall, there was so much like juicy character stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Like all the dynamics between the characters, they were really leaning on that. And they were like, listen, stop thinking about the science and just enjoy these characters. Like, it's definitely a character driven story. They're not expecting anybody watching it to be doing what we're essentially doing right now.
Well, they're probably like, look, we spent extra money to get Ernie Hudson. Stop talking about the fucking stars.
Don't worry about it.
Well, how about we talk about the hard drive, or rather, the USB battery that they have?
I'm like,
Now, I know.
and she should have been fried. I'm sorry. There's like no way.
How did what is her name? Janice?
Janice.
How did Janice
Jocelyn.
like rig a server to like actively spark? And if she did, why is Jen alive? And thirdly, do they know what a hard drive is? They opened up a computer and there's like a little USB thing inside. That's not what a server looks like. So I know we don't have any video here, but I'm gonna show you guys. I literally just happened to have the exact battery they used
Oh
for their
no.
hard drive, and this is what they used for their hard drive. I recognized it immediately.
Oh my
It
god.
is a USB. Has 2 USB ports, a flashlight, and a USB-C charge port. And I was like, "That's
I mean,
that's my
and they were
battery."
saying
she's
that
an
was a hard drive?
astrophysicist. Maybe she made something up. I don't know.
Well, I mean, but then they connected to their computer via USB, and like a server, you can't take one drive and recover the data. Like you have to have all the drives because the data is interspersed evenly throughout it. And if there's striping, then it might have some redundancy, and you might be able to get away with just getting half the drive. But essentially, you really shouldn't be able to just take a drive from a server and then have all of the data.
So here's the thing. I don't know that.
Ah, no.
You could just tell me like, listen, Jen, I'm gonna unhook the phalange from the flip flop in this doodad, and I'd be like, totally, absolutely.
But again, I'm only
I
marking
hear
on
you.
it because it's cheesy and I noticed it. It's not like
Yeah.
something that's bothering me about the show, but it is hilarious, and I'm going to bring it up.
Yeah.
But that's not.
Yeah, that was
That's not
pretty
how
funny.
a server works.
But you know, I know technically it's our present day, but 1995 in Quantum Leap land was more advanced than 1995
Yeah, that's
in the
true.
real world. Maybe she figured out how to make a single drive that fit in a server
And put it inside of what we used to
out
think
of a
of
battery.
USB packs.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, Al did go to MIT, so I'm assuming he's pretty smart. He probably passed some of that on to his kid. He was an
seems like she's
astronaut.
got it together.
Yeah, he was like, oh god, he was everything. He was test pilot, astronaut. I think he was at the circus for a while. You know, military.
Yeah.
He did like everything. Pool shark, like you name it, he did it.
This is all stuff we got just like from context in the original show. They just like told us about all that.
Well, it seemed like every time Sam would need to do something that he wasn't sure about, Al was like, "Oh, I got this down. I was an astronaut."
Nice.
Like, you know. And then there was like a trapeze artist one. He's like, "Oh yeah, I was in the circus."
Okay.
Like it seemed like he had done just about everything.
It's like
Yeah.
how Batman in the 60s always had a bat insert object to fix the plot.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, get the bat shark repellent is the famous one.
So it,
So
doesn't
it
jump the
repels
shark?
bat sharks.
Yeah. One more tech gripe. I didn't even like think about it the first time we saw it.
One more thing.
But like the first time I watched it, I just watched it to watch it, and I just enjoyed it as the show. The second time when I took the notes, I was noticing all these things that I like didn't pay attention to before. But when NASA or whoever has classified David Tamura's death gives them the files, they have someone physically walk a tablet over to Ian rather than giving him like credentials or access to a file online. They give him an entire tablet that contains the files. I'm just like, did NASA send just a tablet? And like, if it's that classified, why did they just walk someone over with a tablet that just has the files that apparently Ian can just use? Like, wouldn't they just send him an email
Maybe they
or give him access to a server? Like, literally walk a tablet to him.
Maybe it wasn't NASA's tablet, but maybe that's what they sent the files to,
Maybe.
like a drive or something on the tablet.
Or maybe, you know, Ian just has a special tablet that they keep in their special tablet drawer. And,
they just have
that's
people
where
walk
they
over
get
to
all
them when
their
they need
top
it.
secret. This is Ian's top secret tablet specifically. And they know to like send a signal to the rest of the crew, like they sent some
Hey, when I
stuff
need
to my
info,
tablet. Go
get me my tablet. You know the one.
Yeah. Yeah,
But-
the tablet.
But like the credential thing you're talking about,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. In the 90s, I literally called NASA and asked for their Challenger stuff, and they just sent me a whole packet,
Oh, nice.
like with the report and everything.
A buddy of mine, he's part of a Facebook group that, long story short, bought the RV from Jurassic Park Lost World.
Oh my god.
Like from the movie Picture Car Warehouse. Like they actually own the actual one from the movie. But it was a special job by Winnebago. And so they just called up Winnebago. Like they called up Winnebago and was like, hey, can we have your designs for this unreleased RV that you never sold? And like they sent them to some guy who lived in LA who just still had all of the blueprints and everything like in his desk drawer at home.
Wow.
But they got
So
it though.
see, stuff like that happens.
See, all you have to do is ask sometimes.
And then they walk a tablet to you.
And maybe Ian just has that much pull, though. That's the thing. Like, we don't know what other kind of crazy government stuff they've been involved with up until this point, right? So,
Yeah, they're pretty smart.
yeah.
Oh,
So
speaking of, I'm going to go to a realistic, what's the opposite of a gripe? A praise?
Mm-hmm.
that
Gold
works.
Star.
Ian is software. They make code, right? But when it comes to security, they were like, oh, this is encryption. I can't do that. Basically, like, this should go to Jen, not me. Totally realistic. I've worked with many software developers. Most of them don't even know anything about operating systems, much less encryption.
Yeah.
So just because you're a coder doesn't mean you can hack?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like
Interesting.
two completely different fields. I mean, IT and software development are so far apart. And there's some bleed through with like exceptional individuals, but for the most part, no, they're totally two different people, two different fields. And I was like, wow, they've actually like differentiated between that. That's pretty cool. Whereas I think most people wouldn't know that, right? You just assume, oh,
Yeah.
computers, you can make an application, you can hack into a mainframe, but they're so different.
I imagine
So
it's
is-
easier nowadays for writers to consult software programmers
Yeah.
and IT people than it is to consult astronauts.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
So
it was a
if
praise.
Ziggy gets a virus, we know who did it. It wasn't Ian. It was probably Jen.
Probably
What operating system does Ziggy run on?
Linux. Everything's Linux. Everything's Linux. You just don't know it.
Nice.
PlayStation, Linux. Android, Linux. iPhone, Linux. Everything's Linux.
Is that true?
Interesting.
It's like 90% of the world runs on Linux.
And nobody even
And
knows.
Duncan.
Huh?
And Duncan.
Yeah, and Duncan. Yeah, America runs on
America
Duncan.
run,
Yeah.
no dun dun.
So yeah, Linux. Everything's Linux.
Interesting.
Nice. Okay, well, what other gold stars are we handing out? Because now that we're done bitching about the science.
Like, look, I'm not bitching. I'm just pointing
Yeah.
and
Okay.
laughing, and I was entertained, and so
Yeah.
the show did its thing. Maybe not in the
Yeah.
way they intended.
I will say the biggest gold star for this episode, and why I think ultimately it was more enjoyable than the first one, was because of how much more interaction and dynamics we got between the family, between the team. And that was exactly what we were just talking about in our last episode, recapping the first one. Like, I hope we get more of that. And then we literally got more
And
of
we
that
did.
this time.
And it was wonderful.
So
great.
it seems as though that's the direction we're going to go in the future, is to getting more. And it seems like they're going to do this thing where, like, whatever's happening in the Leap reality is kind of paralleling or mirroring what's happening to the team back home. Because we had, like I said before, these sort of similar dynamics between the characters. I guess we didn't talk that much about, like, the characters on the space shuttle, like, the dynamic between, like, Reynolds and Stratton, and, like, to kind of cycle back to what Andrew was talking about with the manufactured drama. I feel like that's actually where it was that entire he trained me from the time that I was a kid, and now we have to have this whole lesson in trust, and, like, it seems like that kind of thing wouldn't be left until you're literally in space in a dire situation to have
Yeah.
that, like, conversation.
Yeah.
to have that whole like father-daughter dynamic come to a head like that seemed a little melodramatic for the sake of TV drama, but also, like I said before, for the sake of having it actually mirror what's happening back home between Magic and Addison, actually. So I'm not mad at it because I like that pattern. I just hope that it gets a little bit more believable, because like we keep talking about how, well, they get a little pass for, you know, you're not supposed to think about it too hard because it's fun. Like, yes, they get a pass for doing that a lot of the time, but there will be a line where it's like, okay, now they're getting too dumb with it and they're expecting us to overlook too much silliness. Like, there will be a line, and I'm sure there will be a point where we're like, okay, too much silly now.
It's like, no, we're done. We're done.
We need to believe a little bit. Like, I can only suspend my disbelief to have fun so far. And clearly that line is going to be different for everybody, depending on how scientific and logical a person you are. So clearly my line for this episode is very different from like Andrew's line.
Well, and I'm not saying that any line was crossed. Like I said, I'm just pointing it out, and I have to laugh at it because.
But you're noticing
silly.
more of those things than I do, because I don't think about the same type of stuff you think about.
Apparently, I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I noticed all that too. And then I'm like, but what?
But ooh, flirting.
Yeah, oh, they're so cute.
yeah. Which I'm all about that too, though. So yeah, I think that's what this episode succeeded at the most, though, was giving us all of that character-driven stuff. It's setting the standard for this is about the characters and their dynamics, and you're definitely supposed to care more about that than anything else.
Yeah, this to me, my little gold star. This felt like a classic Quantum Leap episode.
Definitely.
To me. Like, I watch this and I'm like, oh my god, it's like I'm watching the original all over, except, you know, everybody's different. But but just the way the leap was going and all the stuff back in the project, that was like a bonus. It's like, yeah, we didn't get that back in the day.
Yeah. More characters.
But there was still, I think, more focus on the leap and the people in the leap, kind of. Because when Sam would leap into people, you would kind of care about these characters, you know?
Them.
Yeah, and you get an idea of who they were, what their lives were like. And I feel we had more of that in this episode than we did in the last one.
Yeah, I feel like, again, you know, part of that was because, at least from what I have seen of the original series, whatever the lesson is that Sam needs to help the person that he's leapt into figure out in order to like rescue them and correct their situation.
Which is what he did with Stratton.
And ended up being something that applied to him, being a lesson that he could then take, you know, for himself and his own personal growth. So that was the similarity there. Whereas this time, it's not just about Ben. It's that the lesson that he's gleaning from his leap is also going to be a lesson learned by Addison and by Ian and by Jen and by Magic. Lilu.
I see Lilu back there.
Our cat is in the background. You should have seen her a minute ago. She was going ham. She was playing.
I saw her running in the back. Yeah. I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Great. My cat, for the listeners, my cat's going crazy behind me in the camera.
I'm telling you, we need to have a live show just for that.
Yeah. We can have cat cams.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that goes back to what you were saying earlier about the mirroring. There's parallels between what's going on in present day and the leap time, but there's also parallels in Ben's personal story and the story he's discovering about the people he's leapt into, the person he's leapt into, and their
and now we have this mystery intrigue on top of it, and I feel like there wasn't any of that in the original, from at least, you know, as early on. Like, I have now seen as much of this show as I have of the original Quantum Leap.
2 episodes.
And in those, it was technically 3 episodes, right? Because the first leap was a 2-parter.
Yeah.
And then the second, so I've technically seen 3 episodes, but 2 leaps. So now I've seen 2 leaps of this series too. And 2 leaps in, we already have this huge mystery that we are trying to figure out with, why is Ben doing this? Where is he go? He has a goal. He has a specific thing he's after. What is he working with Janice on? How does she tie into all of this? Whereas in the first 2 leaps of the original series, it was just setting this this is what this show's about, and here's what Sam is like, and here's the dynamic between he and Al. Yeah. But there was no like mystery intrigue tying it back to present. Like the only real mystery was like, how are we going to get you back home? But that was less of a mystery and more of a like the driving force of why he keeps leaping. But we, the audience, didn't ever really want him to get back home anytime soon, because then the show would be over. So, exactly. But this time, like, we want stuff to get figured out. We're like, why is this happening?
Well, and then that's the thing, like, yeah, you want Ben to get home, but you also kind of want to figure out what he's doing. Yeah. Is he going to make it to his destination? Because, you know, in the end, when they had that big old
the big
map up, it's like, interesting. Yeah. So what was he... I personally don't feel it's anything nefarious.
Oh, of course not. But that adds the drama of, like, there's...
Sorry. Finish this thought. And then I'll have to come back to this if I remember it.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, yeah. But the idea that there's this edge of, well, wait, does he possibly have a bad, like, a malintent? Like, why would they even think that if they have this close familial relationship, and now their trust in each other is shaken, and their relationship dynamic is like they're trying to navigate around that because Ben kept a big secret from them, and they're like, their faith is shaken. So there's that aspect of it that we're like, I hope it gets resolved because we want them all to love each other.
Yeah, and I really like Ben's reaction to that too. Is like, hey, look, I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, you know, it probably is better you keep me in the dark. I think it was a very
level-headed,
diplomatic way to handle that.
Yeah. He's not overly emotional.
Yeah.
He's definitely got up like that heart of gold that like, I'm always going to do the right thing no matter what. Which is ultimately what the point of the episode is. Addison's like, hey, I trust him because he's still Ben. He's still proving that he's going to be doing the right thing. So I fully trust that he's not doing anything bad, because he wouldn't. It's out of character.
Which is why I too was like, you know, if he had any bad bone in his body, he wouldn't. They tell him to help somebody, he wouldn't care. He'd be like, whatever.
Yeah. But you know, but he's still level-headed though. Like he's emotional enough to have a good, strong sense of morality, but he's level-headed enough to like put his own feelings aside to be like, hey, this is the right thing to do. Okay, I'll hold off learning stuff about who I am if it, you know, means I'm not doing anything bad. Cool. So, Andrew, what was your epiphany?
We were talking about the map that Ian pulled up when they were on their computer. Is that Ziggy? When
the map is not Ziggy.
I mean, could that have been an interface of Ziggy of any kind?
I don't think so.
Because he wrote run exe, which means he was using Windows.
Oh no wonder Ziggy can't talk anymore.
I can't remember what the rest of the command was. It's only up on the screen for like a second. It kind of looked like technical jargon, like not real, because like run exe, like he'd even like tell it what exe to run, exe being an executable file, but he said run exe, they said run exe, not like run, you know, map 3D exe. So
yeah,
but yeah, that was definitely like Windows programming language that I saw on their interface there. When
but
they opened the map.
I don't think that was Ziggy. I think Ziggy is pretty much just regarding the leaps. I don't think they're going to use that for surfing the internet or...
It's not Zoogle.
Playing Galaga.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Keep Ziggy separate from, you know, basically the internet. Because then no one can find Ziggy.
She'll have to be on the dark web.
No.
Otherwise, everyone's going to be like, www.ziggy.com.
Yeah. I also did notice there was another use of David Bowie this episode.
Yeah.
And it's making me wonder if that's going to be a running theme, if they're going to use a David Bowie song in every single episode.
That would be bomb.
I would not be mad at that. Being the huge David Bowie fan that I am, but also like because it ties in with the whole like the machine's name is Ziggy, so it goes. I know Alexander Park is like they're a humongous David Bowie fan. Like they literally just did this whole concert where they were performing David Bowie covers. It was actually really cool. Check it out if you have not. They're very talented. And I just, now I'm kind of like, okay, if they keep doing that, that's going to be a fun thing to keep tuning in for, to see like which Bowie song they're going to use this time. Because it made sense for this episode. Like in the first episode, it made sense because those were 80s songs and they were in the 80s. And in this episode, it makes sense because it was like, well, they're in space and this is the space song. The space song.
Space song.
So did it just so happen to be that those songs worked for these episodes, or are they going to keep doing that? So I'll be very, very interested to see if in episode 3 we get another Bowie song and how it's going to tie in.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if Quantum Leap had anything similar.
I think Quantum Leap just had relevant music of that age, just to like tell us when he was.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything that stands out like that. But I mean, now that we're on the Bowie and Ian and all that, I'm having a really hard time coming up with a favorite character.
Yeah.
I mean, Ben really endeared himself to me because I remember I wanted to be an astronaut, and I'm like, me too, Ben. Me too.
I get it.
But like Ian, they are like the BFF that everybody needs in their lives, and I'm like, I mean, I know everybody said that Ben was the glue, but I mean, Ian was like the one telling everybody.
They're definitely stepping in that glue role in the absence of Ben. I do think they have that perfect line between like they're definitely really fun and have that like silliness about them, but they also are super intelligent and brilliant, and like they're the ones holding everything together because they speak Ziggy. So I'm also I love Jenn. I really love Jenn.
She's great.
I want to see more of her. I want to see more of her dynamic with Magic. I love that sort of like big sister / mom vibe that she gives off. And I love that sort of, she's clearly the oldest sibling. I know 2 of us are our oldest siblings in this chat. Not
and
to
one of us is the baby.
But so I definitely, there are times when I feel like I'm going to relate to that aspect of Jenn's character. Of course, Addison has a lot of cool stuff going for her as well. She's got that cool military babe vibe, and that sort of like had to get thrust into this role of being the guide when that wasn't what she was trained to do. But she's clearly pulling it off really well, whilst dealing with the emotional trauma of like, my fiance suddenly, dropped this bomb on me and doesn't remember who I am now, and like I know I would not be able to handle that. I'd be a mess. But Addison is holding it together pretty well. To the point that I kind of hope we get a little bit more vulnerability from Addison soon. Like she's definitely tough. She's like the tough one here because she's dealing with all of this, and I think we're going to need to see a moment where she kind of breaks down and struggles with those emotions at some point, because it would make sense that that's a natural progression of those feelings.
Yeah. More depth to a character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Caitlin Bassett, she's great in this role.
Yeah, and she has like no acting experience pretty much other than this.
Yeah. And so I think if they get to that point where because I could see just some of the like decisions she made in her acting, like when Ben would say something and she'd give him this look. Mm-hmm. Or, things like that. I'm like, once she does have that little breakdown, I think she's going to excel. Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see how long they go before she reveals to Ben what the nature of their relationship is. Is that going to be... That's a really, like, interesting dynamic to me, because there's always this sort of will they, won't they dynamic in a lot of TV shows where that they're going to get together, but they're, gonna drag it out as long as possible.
But in this
But
case,
with
they
these
already
ones,
have.
they already are together, just one of them doesn't know it. So how long are they going to be able to hold that up before A, he figures it out, B, he just remembers, or C, she can't keep it in anymore and she tells him, or something slips.
Or D, he tells her to dump her boyfriend and go with him.
And she's like, how do I do that?
It's like, hey, so when I get back, you're leaving your guy, right?
Yeah. Well...
Not quite.
Yeah, or if their relationship dynamic changes, if, over the course of things, they figure out that maybe they don't want to be together, which
I'd cry.
I don't see that happening, but I could see like a moment of shakiness coming up in the plot just for the sake of tension and drama. Like
I
they're
would
gonna have to
say
resolve
if that comes up, it's going to be more along the lines of Ben realizing he's never going to get home, so try to make Addison move on, even though they have to work together still. I think it'll come up like that.
It's something Sam never did. Because, well, first of all, he didn't even remember he had a wife until he went home.
He had a wife?
Yeah, he did. He had a wife.
Okay.
I don't know if they were always married. They kind of made it seem like she left him at the altar and then he changed history.
Okay.
But he did have a wife. He didn't remember her. And when he did come home, he remembered her. When he left again, it wasn't like, you should move on, be happy. It's like, it kind of had that wait for me feeling. And I'm like, but if he never comes back, you're just here and unhappy. And yeah, you love the person, but if you are never going to see them again, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
She can't even talk to him. At least Addison can talk to Ben.
Yeah. So I'm very... Yeah, this is a lot of character drama here. That's clearly what this is about. And it's a lot of, I think, what may have been missing from the original series. So I think the writers were pretty smart, or the showrunners were pretty smart in realizing, like, what was the missing piece from the original series. We need more characters. We need more character drama, more development, more relationships. Because the entire series seems to pretty much only just have the one main relationship between Sam and Al. And now we have all these different, myriad of relationships.
I personally wouldn't say we're missing it from the original Quantum Leap because I love the way it is. I think it's more simple because that is the time that it came out in. Yeah. I do think it's necessary now.
That's what I mean. Like, for the sake of an update.
From the original.
Well, that's what I mean, though. Like, for the sake of an update, what changes are necessary?
I'm hungry for it now in this context.
Yeah.
But not in the context of, I wish they had put it in the original.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did always wish for more backstory, but the original Quantum Leap is more... There was, of course, the lore that... There were some lore-heavy episodes and everything, but mostly it was your quote-unquote monster of the week. Yeah. Where it was just, this is Sam's adventure this week, and this is Sam's adventure next week, and this is the underlying plot of trying to get him home, but, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So, there was always a part of me that wanted to see more of the project, more of Al outside the project. Mm-hmm. I wanted to see more about him. The novels kind of covered some of that, which is pretty good, but
then you don't get
I like the fact that it's in the show. Yeah. Yeah. And we're seeing all this. It's not just some fan fiction speculation on XYZ. It's actually, this is canon. This is what's going on. Yeah. So I like that.
Any other points that we haven't drilled into the ground regarding this episode? I mean, we also got into, like, what we hope to see in the next episode as well. We know that he's getting punched.
I feel like there's an original episode that started very similarly.
Yeah.
It just seemed super familiar to me when I saw that. I was like, wait, did Sam have this, like, almost exact intro before?
Yeah, I think... It was the right hand of God, I think. Let me
Make
look
it
up.
or make or break.
Right hand of God. Quantum Leap.
Oh no, there's an actual
Yeah.
boxer named Sam Beckett. Okay.
Oh, no. The Right Hand of God, it's
I see it.
season 1, episode 4,
Mm-hmm.
where he leaps into a boxer and he's trying to save a church.
That is why
Okay, that's why it's
I
familiar
remember
to me.
it, because we watched
Yeah.
episode 1, 2, and 3, which means we saw the episode 4 opener
Leap in.
Yeah,
at the end of episode 3.
yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember which season. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's season 1, maybe 2, because season 1 was kind of short.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was season 1.
Oh wait, no, I did continue on watching this. Sydney didn't see this one, but I
But I
did see
saw
this
that.
one.
But that's why it was
But you saw
familiar
the
to me
opener.
also, because I saw that little same thing, and I was like, "Wait, we've done that already."
Which is
and
funny,
that's
right?
cool because it's after the second leap.
This is the 3rd episode, but it is also his 3rd leap.
Yeah,
In the original, it is the 4th episode, but it is also his 3rd leap.
yeah.
Is
Smart.
No,
Smart.
no. Technically, it is his 4th.
Oh, okay.
Ben's.
Because he leaped into that baseball player at the very end of episode 1.
Oh,
Or, well, episode...
pilot.
The pilot, part 2.
But yeah, but
I mean, that was like 5
but
minutes.
it was pilot, then baseball player, then boxer, wasn't it?
No, pilot, baseball player. I just watched it. A pilot, baseball player. The boxer was episode 4. What was episode 3?
Well, episode 3 was the second leap because the first leap was a two-parter.
Yeah, but what was the second leap? No, it'd be the 3rd leap. Because he leaped into the baseball player in the second episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying... Okay, Quantum Leap. Season 1. I can't remember that 3rd leap.
I think.
Episodes. Here we go. Okay, Genesis. So, episodes 1 and 2, he was the pilot and then the baseball player. Star-Crossed. Star-Crossed was the 3rd one. He leaped into a professor.
Oh, I do remember that.
That was the one
did
with his
see
wife.
that. Yeah.
Or his future wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did see that. Okay.
And then, yeah.
Maybe did they use the clip of the boxer in like the little intro thing where they show like a montage of bits from different episodes to show like
I want to say that's in there.
because the boxer thing, like, it immediately felt familiar to me, even though I had only seen like a little bit at the beginning. I was like, didn't Sam do that too? Either way, it's something that Sam did in the first season, and now Ben is doing it in his first season, and that's pretty cool. In his first handful of leaps, that they're drawing those similarities. I wonder if they're going to do that again at any point.
I would say
Maybe.
probably. I mean, they seem to be paying homage throughout as much as they can.
Can I bring up like one thing that it's not really a gripe with the original series, but it's just something that was kind of weird to me. Like Sam would leap into a woman, or Sam would leap into a black man, or I think he leaped into like someone with Down syndrome, and he would like notate that. He'd be like, I'm a woman, I'm a black man. That's not happening in this, and I kind of like that we've dropped that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I get it. You know, if you leap into a black man in the middle of the civil rights era,
there's going to be context there.
Yeah, but it's like, it's just like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Not, oh wow.
Yeah, it's more,
I didn't know I could do that.
I'm David Tamura, not
yeah.
I'm the first Japanese astronaut from America. Or
Well,
I'm not sure.
yeah. Well, he pointed out that he was an immigrant because it related to his own memory.
Yeah.
Exactly. But in the last episode, he was like, I'm a white man.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's just...
He might have
it's just-
thought it.
But you might have thought it. But it's not... There's not attention drawn to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like that we've kind of dropped that drawing attention to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think
sense.
it's necessary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense in the context of today's political environment. You know, we are
Yeah.
we are past that most of us are past that.
Most of us.
politically, the need to like point it out, that sort of thing. So
Yeah. I like I said, in the original, I kind of got what they were going for, but I also think, hey, when you look in the mirror, we're all going to see who you've leapt into.
yeah.
We're all going to draw the context from who you're interacting with.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. And the struggles of, like, let's say Ben does leap into the body of a woman, like, it's going to go without saying that he's going to be like, whoa, about the adjustments and things that are going to be like weird for him to figure out. But he's not going to need to physically say, oh, I'm a chick. Like, it's not.
Ben figures out how to use a tampon.
No. No.
Why am I cramping? What is this?
Oh boy.
Oh.
Oh my god. That was like perfect, Sydney.
Oh. Can you imagine just the whole point of the episode is for him to not like save anyone or do anything, but just be successful at being a woman for like a few days?
I mean, are there any men that can do that?
Maybe.
But there might be, but I mean, a little bit of cramps and some might actually just die.
I'll pass, thank you.
I mean, I don't want to get kicked in the nuts either, so.
Oh, no, thank you.
No, you do not.
I wouldn't want to be a man for a day.
No.
There's downfalls to each side.
Yeah, and everything in between, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. On that note.
We do have a question of the week.
Oh.
I think something we kind of didn't do last week, but we had done it in our introduction and our classic episodes, is we asked the question to each other, and I think we should do that.
Okay.
So this week's question that we had thought of was, what did you want to be when you were younger? Based on Ben's own experience of he wanted to be an astronaut and then, wasn't. What did you want to be when you grew up? And then, are you in that field? Are you not in that field? Are you near that field? Or did you just completely change when you grew up? Christina?
Well, I wanted to be an astronaut.
I was going to say, we already know, we technically already know this answer.
I, strangely enough, I came to this conclusion after watching Apollo 13.
Yeah.
A disaster movie in space.
I want to go through that.
That looks great.
I was really hardcore into it. I'm actually still one day going to go to adult space camp.
Nice.
Because they make adult space camp. But I didn't wind up anywhere near. I work in an office. I deal with people.
Oof.
Office space?
Yeah. Some of them are from space.
Personal space?
I think everyone is.
Yeah.
We're all made of stardust.
That is
The first thing I remember wanting to be is a veterinarian.
Oh.
More seriously, when I was a little bit older, I wanted to be a pilot. And now I'm in IT. So the answer is no, I did not realize my childhood dream of being a veterinarian, because as it turns out, when you're a veterinarian, you gotta see animals die.
Yeah, we don't want that.
I can't do that.
Thank you.
F that noise.
And I never pursued being a pilot because I found out I could not enlist into the Navy or Air Force to be an officer, someone who can actually fly, because of my asthma.
Oh.
So
You're supposed to lie about that.
yeah, well, I mean, but mine's pretty severe, so I would probably die. So, but it's okay because, as we discussed, I get tunnel vision on roller coasters, so I don't think I could fly a jet.
No, you might crash it.
I mean, I could fly like a passenger jet, like a Boeing, Airbus, or something like that.
Yeah.
Sydney.
My very first career aspiration ever was that I wanted to be the Pink Ranger. I still am
Who
in my
didn't?
dreams.
Wanted to be her or have her,
I definitely wanted to be the Pink Ranger. That was my earliest career aspiration. But when it was time to actually be considering those things, I pretty much always wanted to go into some artistic field. For a while, I wanted to get into fine arts. I was, developing my drawing and painting skills, and I was like, maybe this is where it's at. But I still love performing, and okay, I want to be an actor. I love singing. I grew up around musicians. I want to be a singer. I want to be David Bowie. Like I went through that phase where I was like, oh, I see. You can be an actor and a musician at the same time. For a while, I thought I was going to go into theater, and those were things that over the course of my life, I did in fact explore every single one of those, and have been paid for doing all of those things individually. And now I've sort of settled into, I got into teaching. And so now I teach kids and teens how to do all of those things, except for being a Pink Ranger. Like I could teach you how to act like a Pink Ranger, or sing a song about being the Pink Ranger, or drawing a picture of a Pink Ranger. Even dance. I also got into dance. And those are all things that, because I teach performing arts and also visual arts. So you could say that technically
you also host too. So
I do also host. I host not only here, but my Dark Crystal podcast, and do a lot of work with the Jim Henson Company. And so over the course of my entire childhood, my dreams were just bouncing all over assorted arts, and I ended up in assorted arts. So while I did not end up going into being famous, the dreams of fame were very short-lived. Like I only wanted that in early adolescence, when I thought that was just what it meant to be an artist. But that didn't last, that desire. So
I don't blame you.
yeah, especially now. I certainly would have that same opinion now, even if I had wanted fame a little longer than I did. It definitely would still have disappeared by now. So
it feels like now more than ever there's zero privacy.
Yeah.
For famous people.
Yeah.
It's less that it's hard to have it, and more you're expected to give it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The masses, the public wants to know everything you're doing at every moment. You have to be on Twitter giving us your details. You have to be, on TMZ or whatever to be relevant.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal.
I mean, if I was famous, honestly, I would be the asshole who would be on Twitter. I'm taking a dump. You want to know everything about me?
Yeah. So here you go. Yeah. I can't say that would be me especially, but a big part of why I think being famous is not appealing is because there are more eyes on you at all times for things like that. So you do have to be super careful about the kinds of things you say. And even now, developing more of a following online on social media and through the podcasts and through the Dark Crystal community. And, I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel of my own pretty soon here. And that, the audience that comes with that alone, I'm already in a place where I'm like, make sure that I think before I post. And if you were genuinely famous, it's dude, they'll dig it up. They'll roast you with it. They'll cancel you with it. I hate using that word, but you know what I mean? People will come after you and decide they don't like you anymore over, any wrong thing said. And a lot of the times it's justified. But it's still I don't want to navigate that, man.
Yeah. Well, that's people will dig stuff up from years and years and years ago, and it's canceled. And yes, some people absolutely 100% need to be canceled, but sometimes I'm like, okay, this was 10 years ago. How is this person now?
Yeah.
Have they grown from this experience? Yeah. Have they learned? Have they apologized? Genuinely apologized and learned from their experience? Maybe we should take that into consideration.
Context matters for most things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if Ben is going to leap into a celebrity at some point. That's interesting. Did Sam ever leap into a celebrity?
Yes.
Okay.
He has been.
Famous
He was in Elvis.
Wait, he was Elvis?
He was in Elvis.
He was an Elvis.
Oh, like an Elvis impersonator.
No, he was Elvis.
Oh.
He was Anne the Elvis.
So.
And then
Wow.
he was Marilyn Monroe's like bodyguard.
Oh.
And he was also, I don't count him as famous, more like infamous. He was Lee Harvey Oswald.
Mm.
He was Lee Harvey Oswald?
Mhm.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that was not my favorite episode. It was too,
I mean, it's dark. It went into like murder and stuff, right? So
yeah, it was too,
too real.
it skirted that line between fantasy and reality. And I'm like, this is not why I watch this show.
I see.
Yeah. I'm like, I know the Lee Harvey Oswald story.
Yeah.
We all have our opinions on it, on, you know, who shot JFK. But
Maybe that was too spicy for Quantum Leap.
I was like, I don't need to see it
Yeah.
played out on TV.
So wait, when he was Elvis, was he like Elvis already famous?
No, prior to Famous.
Oh, okay.
He actually almost destroyed his career.
Sure.
Oops.
Yeah.
That could have widespread implications in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
You know, it really could, because Elvis broke a lot of barriers.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this week. We hope to see you next week, or we hope you hear us next week
Yeah.
as we discuss episode 3. Anything we're looking forward to on this upcoming episode?
That we didn't say already? I mean,
More magic.
more magic?
Definitely more magic.
More Ian. More, intrigue. I hope we find out a little bit more regarding the mystery, like why, what's going on with Ben and Janet. A little more answers.
Yeah. I just want to see Addison teaching Ben how to box.
Yeah. I'm sure she knows how to, because
Yeah, definitely.
she seems,
Yeah.
Militarily capable.
Yeah.
She must know how to fight.
Yeah, that would be a parallel. I mean, Al did the same for Sam, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
Janice.
So
not
I
Janet.
kind of want to see that.
Janice. More
Janice.
explanation as to why, like what Ben and Janice are planning. I hope we get a little bit more about that.
I also want to see, because according to the last episode of the original, Al has 4 daughters.
Wow.
So where are the other 3? Did they just write them off, or are they somewhere else? Or are they just not important?
They didn't go into science.
They were like, no.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
That seems messy and
That took my
dangerous.
dad's
I'm gonna
whole
not.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll just be a kindergarten teacher, or
Right.
one of them's like a custodian or something, like something so far removed.
Yeah, like not even science
Yeah,
adjacent.
something safe. So yeah,
All right. Again, we hope to have you back next week. See you all later.
bye.
Bye.